The galaxy believed in numbers. Fleets were counted. Worlds were ranked. Species were measured by population, firepower, and expansion speed. And by every known metric, humans were insignificant. They came from a quiet yellow star at the edge of mapped space. One system. 9 planets. Only one habitable. Their ships were angular, inefficient, and ugly compared to the smooth living hulls of advanced species. Their weapons still relied on kinetic force and fusion fire instead of elegant energy lattices. When humanity first appeared before the Galactic Concord, the chamber did not fall silent. It chuckled. Ambassador Arwell Than of the Virex Combine leaned toward the floating translator orb and spoke with amusement. Population, 12 billion. Military vessels, fewer than 10,000. Controlled systems, 1. You request observer status. The chamber glowed with shifting colors as dozens of alien delegates reacted. Confusion, mild curiosity, boredom. Human Ambassador Elena Ward stood alone on the circular platform. No exosuit. No ceremonial armor. Just a dark uniform and tired eyes. Yes, she said calmly. Observer status. Trade access. And non-aggression recognition. Arwell Than's mandibles flexed in something close to a smile. The Concord recognizes power, he replied. Not potential. You may observe. Nothing more. 1,000 eyes dismissed her at once. Humanity left the chamber ranked last. The storm gathering. Beyond the polite halls of galactic law, the galaxy was already at war. The Jakor swarm, a hive species numbering in the trillions, was expanding again. They did not negotiate. They did not retreat. They consumed stars, stripped planets, and turned entire civilizations into nutrient ash. The Concord strategy was simple. Overwhelm with numbers. Millions of ships. Endless waves. Mathematical certainty. It had worked before. Until it didn't. At the Battle of Keth Prime, the swarm adapted mid-combat. Concord fleets lost 40% of their forces in 6 hours. Entire battle groups vanished as if erased. Emergency sessions were called. Panic rippled through the chamber for the first time in centuries. Admiral Keslan, Supreme Commander of Concord forces, projected casualty data into the air. Our losses exceed replacement capacity. The swarm is learning faster than our models predict. Arwell Than clicked his mandibles sharply. Then deploy more fleets. Keslan's eyes darkened. We have. A pause followed. Then quietly, a voice spoke from the observer tier. What if your numbers are the problem? All eyes turned. Elena Ward stood again. Arwell Than scoffed. Explain human. Elena took a breath. You fight like a flood, she said. The swarm fights like a fire. You feed it with mass. You assume survival means outnumbering death. She tapped her wrist console. A human combat simulation appeared. Small, isolated units, retreat lines, delayed detonations, sacrificial holds. In our history, she continued, we learned that sometimes you don't win by surviving. You win by choosing where to die. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Keslan studied the projection. Your ships are disappearing. Elena nodded. Deliberately. Arwell Than recoiled. You're suggesting intentional losses? I'm suggesting intentional sacrifice, Elena said. To shape the battlefield. To control enemy behavior. To teach them the wrong lessons. Silence. No species in the Concord had ever planned to die. The first test. The Concord did not trust humans. But desperation bends pride. Humanity was given command of a single defensive line, a minor star system scheduled for evacuation. No reinforcement. No backup. Most assumed it would be a symbolic gesture before inevitable failure. The swarm arrived in the millions. Human ships did not charge. They retreated. They fractured. They vanished into asteroid belts and radiation storms. Jakor drones pursued, eager, aggressive, certain. Then the traps closed. Stars flared as fusion charges ignited inside gravity wells. Human cruisers rammed swarm carriers at relativistic speed, overloading shields through sheer momentum. Boarding teams stayed behind to overload reactors, transmitting final data as their life signs went dark. Concord observers watched in horror and awe. The swarm won the system. But for the first time, they slowed. Admiral Keslan whispered, they're hesitating. Arwell Than stared at the data. Impossible. Elena Ward's voice came through the calm but raw. Congratulations, she said. You just taught them fear. The Concord did not celebrate the battle. They counted it. Charts filled the chamber. Numbers of ships lost, energy expended, systems abandoned. By every traditional metric, the human-led defense had been a failure. One system lost. 87 human ships destroyed. 0 territory gained. Arwale Than of the Virex Combine wasted no time. The swarm still advances, he declared. The humans have merely delayed the inevitable at unacceptable cost. Around him, delegates signaled agreement. Loss was loss. Death was inefficiency. Only Admiral Keslan remained silent, his compound eyes fixed on a different projection. Behavioral analysis. The swarm did not pursue, Keslan said slowly. They regrouped. They changed formation. They assigned additional cognition nodes to future engagements. Arwale Than clicked sharply. Adaptation is their nature. Yes, Keslan replied. But hesitation is not. The chamber quieted. Elena Ward stood again, her posture rigid. The exhaustion in her eyes was no longer hidden. Your strategies assume survival is the goal, she said. Ours assume victory is. Several delegates recoiled at that. You lost crews, Arwale Than said. Entire ships. You discarded lives like ammunition. Elena's jaw tightened. No, she said. We spent them. There's a difference. Human history, alien horror. At Keslan's request, humanity was allowed to present doctrine. What followed unsettled the galaxy more than the swarm ever had. Human war archives unfolded across the chamber, ancient battles, last stands, doomed charges that turned tides. Units holding bridges knowing relief would never come. Pilots staying on burning ships to guide them into enemy formations. Soldiers volunteering for missions labeled non-returnable. The Concord had no word for such things. You train them to die? Asked a crystalline delegate from the Ulrith hive. No, Elena answered softly. We train them to choose. She paused, then added, and we honor them when they do. The chamber absorbed this in stunned silence. Arwale Than broke it with contempt. Your species is irrational. Emotion-driven. Wasteful. Elena met his gaze. Yes, she said. And that's why you're losing. The second engagement. The swarm struck again, this time at Valorum Reach, a key transit corridor. Concord fleets assembled in overwhelming force, confident once more. Human command requested something unprecedented. Permission to place human ships at the front. They want to die first, Arwale Than sneered. Keslan hesitated, then approved. The battle began like all others. Energy storms, drone waves, space tearing itself apart. Then the humans did something no simulation predicted. They advanced alone. Human destroyers surged ahead of Concord lines, broadcasting open-channel messages, not to allies but to the enemy. This is Captain Reyes of the UNS Stonefall, a calm voice echoed across frequencies. Target lock confirmed. We are not retreating. The Stonefall detonated inside a swarm command vessel, annihilating it, and every drone linked to it. One ship. Thousands destroyed. The swarm adapted. Humans adapted faster. They changed frequencies mid-battle. Rewrote targeting logic on the fly. Flew damaged ships as weapons. When ammunition ran dry, they rammed. When engines failed, they detonated course. They did not break formation. They did not flee. They held. Behind them, Concord fleets watched in disbelief as the swarm's advance stalled, then fractured. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Jacor swarm retreated. Aftermath. Valorum Reach survived. Human losses were catastrophic. Entire task forces were gone. Back on Earth, names filled endless walls. Cities fell silent for minutes at a time as casualty reports arrived. Families mourned, but recruitment centers overflowed. When asked why, a young volunteer answered simply, "They didn't die so we could stop. They died so we could finish it." The Concord received the report with confusion. They suffered too much, Arwale Than insisted. No species can sustain such loss. Keslan looked at the human data streams, shipyards already rebuilding, crews already training. They don't measure strength the way we do, the Admiral said. Elena Ward stood beside him. You measure strength in numbers, she said. We measure it in what we're willing to give up. She turned back toward the stars. And we haven't even started paying the real price yet. Victory changed the conversation. After Valorum Reach, no one laughed when humans spoke. They didn't cheer either. They watched. The Galactic Concord chamber filled again, but this time the air shimmered with unease instead of arrogance. Delegates whispered in clustered frequencies. Tactical overlays replaced ceremonial banners. At the center hovered a single word, pulsing in cold light. Retreat confirmed, ER swarm. Admiral Keslan addressed the assembly. This is not a victory, he said. It is a deviation. The swarm has adjusted its expansion pattern to avoid human-controlled zones. A low ripple passed through the chamber. Avoidance meant recognition. Arwell Than of the Virex Combine rose slowly, his posture rigid. They fear loss, he said. That does not mean humans are superior. It means the swarm seeks efficiency. Elena Ward did not argue. She simply activated another projection. Human casualty curves overlaid with swarm adaptation graphs. The more we lose, Elena said, the more cautious they become. Several delegates recoiled. You're conditioning them, whispered an Ulrith analyst. Yes, Elena replied. The way predators learn to avoid prey that fights back, even when it dies. Politics fracture. The Concord had ruled for 6,000 years through balance and bureaucracy. But fear cracked unity. Smaller species began requesting human advisors. Border systems petitioned for joint defense treaties with Earth. The great powers pushed back. They're destabilizing the hierarchy, Arwell Than argued in closed session. Their doctrine spreads panic. Sacrifice as strategy invites chaos. Keslan countered quietly. Chaos is already here. They are merely surviving it. The vote passed by a narrow margin. Humans were granted limited strategic authority in 3 contested sectors. Arwell Than recorded his dissent. The trap at Black Halo. The swarm returned sooner than expected. Not to a human zone. To a Concord stronghold, Black Halo Station, a massive ring world anchoring trade routes. Concord fleets mobilized in textbook fashion. Humans advised delay. They're baiting you, warned Commander Aisha Khan, human fleet tactician. They want your mass. The advice was ignored. The swarm struck like a tidal wave. Within minutes, Concord formations collapsed under adaptive assault. Communication nodes failed. Command ships vanished. Aisha's voice cut through the chaos. Permission to execute Protocol Ember. Keslan hesitated. Protocol Ember meant abandonment of the station. It meant stranding millions. The chamber watched in horror as Keslan approved. Human ships moved, not to evacuate everyone. To seal the system. Black Halo Star was destabilized using chain detonations. Gravity twisted. Space folded. The station was lost. So was the swarm fleet inside. Silence followed. Arwell Than's voice trembled. You sacrificed a civilization. Aisha's reply was steady, but her eyes burned. No, she said. We saved 6. The galaxy reacts. Protests erupted across Concord space. Philosophers argued. Priests screamed. Politicians demanded human removal from command. Yet the math was undeniable. The swarm had lost an entire expansion arm. And for the first time, their growth curve declined. Arwell Than confronted Elena privately. You are monsters, he said. You destroy what you cannot save. Elena looked tired. Older. We destroy what will destroy everything, she replied. There's a difference. You just never needed to learn it. A different kind of weapon. Deep within human space, something else was being prepared. Not a fleet. Not a bomb. A message. Captured swarm cognition fragments were being studied, not to destroy them but to speak. Most Concord scientists called it madness. The swarm did not communicate. Humans disagreed. They adapt, said Dr. Merrick Solis. Adaptation requires understanding. Understanding means there's something listening. The first transmission was not a threat. It was a recording. Human voices. Final logs. Last words of those who had stayed behind. Messages of fear. Of defiance. The swarm reacted violently, communication spikes flaring across their network. Then abruptly. Silence. They're processing, Merrick whispered. Elena watched the data stream. They're learning, she said. And when they finish... She didn't finish the sentence. Ending scene. In the Concord chamber, Arwell Than stared at the projections. Shrinking swarm fronts, rising human influence, fractured alliances. For a species so small, he muttered, they cast very long shadows. Keslan answered without looking at him. They don't cast shadows, the Admiral said. They become the darkness that protects the light. The galaxy had begun to whisper warnings. They do not fight like others, some admitted in hushed tones. They do not fear death. They do not bargain. They sacrifice everything, and yet survive. But not all voices were fearful. Some were envious. Within the Concord, a faction of ambitious alien lords saw opportunity. They wanted to use humans, bend them to their designs, or worse, test them. Arwell Than, burning with both doubt and resentment, convened a secret council. They are clever, he hissed to his inner circle. Too clever to ignore. Perhaps, too clever to control. We need leverage. The plan was simple. Bait humanity into a trap. The hollow system. The target, a newly colonized system on the edge of Jakor space, rich in rare minerals and with strategic wormhole access. The trap was perfect, or so the conspirators thought. They allowed humans to know of the system through intercepted communications, ensuring that Ambassador Elena Ward would see the opportunity to defend it. They placed signals of distress, civilian ships, partially fortified stations, and even abandoned fleets, to lure humans into the perfect kill zone. Elena studied the system with her commanders. This is strange, said Admiral Keslan. It's almost too perfect, too clean. Elena's brow furrowed. Strange can be deliberate, but we don't hesitate. We adapt. Her eyes glimmered with that familiar human resolve, the calm certainty that every possible loss is accounted for, even before the first shot is fired. Humans plan the impossible. Unlike the rest of the Concord, humans did not assume the obvious. While alien leaders plotted ambushes based on what humans could do, humans asked, what would they never expect? The fleet was split into 3 groups. The forward strike, intentionally weaker, seeming vulnerable, intended to be targeted first. The Shadow Fleet, hidden among asteroid fields, damaged ships, and decoy signals. The core force, waiting outside wormhole range, ready to deliver the final decisive blow. Captain Reyes, leading the forward strike, radioed his team. Remember, we are expendable, but the rest are not. Make every loss matter. The Swarm and the conspiratorial Concord forces watched with anticipation. They expected chaos. Humans were expected to die in large numbers. They were wrong. The Battle of Hollow System. It began like every other fight. The forward strike advanced boldly, taking heavy fire. Ships exploded. Screens filled with kinetic flares, fusion burns, and screaming energy fields. The Swarm swarmed, confident in their numbers. The Concord conspirators leaned in, sure of humanity's inevitable defeat. Then the Shadow Fleet activated. Ships that had appeared destroyed, or abandoned, emerged from asteroid belts, high radiation zones, and cloaked wormholes. They struck from behind, above, and below. The forward strike, far from being a liability, channeled enemy forces into kill zones precisely calculated by human strategists. Explosions tore through the Swarm's formations. Swarm drones collided mid-flight. Concord ships misfired in confusion. Command nodes were destroyed by ramming vessels that had been predicted lost hours before. Humans knew the losses would happen, and each loss had been designed to multiply enemy casualties. Arwaelthan's mandibles trembled. Impossible? How could they anticipate every strike? Keslan whispered, they're not anticipating, they're dictating the battle. Sacrifice and surprise. Captain Reyes' ship, the Stonefall II, was critically damaged. Crew casualties were enormous. Yet Reyes stayed on course, broadcasting real-time targeting data, guiding a dozen allied ships to overrun a swarm carrier. We cannot survive this, Reyes transmitted calmly. We can end this for them. The carrier exploded, triggering a chain reaction that wiped out nearly half of the enemy fleet in one precise strike. From orbit, Elena Ward watched and smiled faintly. Every life we lose shapes the future of 1,000, she murmured. The Swarm learns. Too late. Amid the chaos, the Swarm made a mistake. They concentrated too many drones on the forward strike, underestimating the Shadow Fleet. Human ships navigated the field flawlessly, adapting in real time, predicting trajectories, adjusting shields, firing back with devastating accuracy. The Swarm's central command was finally reached, not destroyed in brute force but outsmarted. Their cognition nodes were overloaded with false signals, enemy decoys, and human counterintelligence. For the first time, the Swarm felt fear. Not from human firepower, but from human strategy. Aftermath, galactic shock. The hollow system was won. Human casualties were high, thousands of lives lost. But the enemy losses were catastrophic. Entire fleets vanished. Swarm expansion halted. And the Concord's conspirators had been publicly humiliated. In the chamber, delegates could no longer dismiss humanity. Arwaelthan, pale with disbelief, muttered, they are not numbers. They are a weapon, of their own design. Elena Ward addressed the assembly for the first time since the battle. The galaxy assumes we fight like you. We don't. You measure strength by survival. We measure it by impact. Every loss has purpose. Every sacrifice teaches the enemy the wrong lesson. And when that lesson is learned, she paused, letting the chamber feel the weight of her words. We are unstoppable. Even Keslan, usually stoic, felt a chill. Humans were no longer just a factor in galactic calculations, they were an entirely new variable. And the galaxy would have to learn fast, or be consumed by the very brilliance it had underestimated. The Hollow System victory did more than destroy fleets, it shattered assumptions. Across the Concord, whispers became discussions. Discussions became debates. And debates became frantic summits. For the first time in 6,000 years, the galaxy recognized a species could not be measured by numbers alone. Human strategic influence. Earth became the hub of galactic intelligence. Every major species sent observers, advisors, and intelligence analysts, not to command humans but to learn from them. Elena Ward presided over the Human Strategic Council. She and Admiral Keslan coordinated fleet doctrines, resource allocations, and predictive modeling. But unlike other species, humans relied on intuition informed by history, not rigid logic. We don't just calculate risk, Elena told her commanders. We calculate choice. Every decision, every loss, every sacrifice, is part of a larger equation the enemy can never see. Ships trained in simulated catastrophes, teams practiced strategic retreats that doubled as traps, and fleets learned to die beautifully, turning loss into weapon. The Concord watched, horrified and fascinated. Political ripple effects. In the wake of Hollow System, smaller species petitioned for formal alliances with humanity. I want protection, said Delegate Viacor of the Nithari cluster, even if it means bending my principles to follow them. The great powers resisted. They feared humanity's unpredictability. Arwail Than and others attempted to block human-led initiatives, claiming humans were reckless. But the results spoke louder than rhetoric. Systems protected by human command suffered minimal losses, while fleets led by traditional Concord officers were decimated by even minor swarm incursions. In secret, some species even began adopting human doctrines, using sacrifice as strategy, unpredictability as a weapon. Galactic politics had shifted. Humans were the axis of new order. The first human counteroffensive. It was time to take the fight to the swarm. Elena Ward and Admiral Keslan convened a council aboard the flagship Resolute. The swarm thinks it can adapt, Keslan said, scanning tactical simulations. It cannot understand humans because it cannot fathom sacrifice, ingenuity, or deception combined. Elena tapped the table. Star systems lit across the map, systems ripe for counterattack. We strike where they don't expect us. Not in force, not in overwhelming numbers, Elena explained. We strike with precision, deception, and timing. Every ship is a decision. Every crew is a variable. The plan was audacious. Small, mobile fleets would hit multiple swarm fronts simultaneously. Each engagement would draw the enemy into traps, creating confusion that would allow Concord allies to reclaim lost sectors. This is not just a counterattack, Elena said softly. It is a lesson in human strategy. And lessons the swarm will never forget. The galactic response. Arwail Than seethed. He had warned against trusting humans. Now he feared defying them. They are a disease, he muttered to Keslan. Every move they make spreads uncertainty. Every victory rewrites strategy. Keslan, stoic, simply nodded. They are the galaxy's immune system. Unpredictable, brutal, necessary. In the background, smaller delegates quietly began realigning fleets and trade agreements in anticipation of human-led campaigns. Earth became the center of military innovation, diplomacy, and intelligence. For the first time, humanity was no longer a single species on the fringe, they were the defining force of the galaxy. The counteroffensive begins. The first coordinated strikes began with surgical precision. Human scouts infiltrated swarm communication networks, feeding false intelligence that led enemy drones into traps. Human destroyers feigned retreats, luring entire fleets into ambushes within asteroid fields and black hole proximities. Engineers sacrificed vessels loaded with gravity bombs to collapse swarm wormholes, cutting off entire fronts. Concord observers could not believe what they were seeing. Entire swarm fleets, once unstoppable, were routed with fewer human casualties than expected, and every human loss amplified enemy confusion. When asked why they accepted such risk, a human commander answered simply, "Every life we give is an investment. The enemy pays in multiples. And every life we lose teaches them a lesson they cannot unlearn." The message spread across the galaxy: humans fight differently and no one else can fight like them. The galaxy's awakening. Across thousands of worlds, historians, scientists, and philosophers debated humanity's methods. Some called them mad, some called them divine, and others whispered the truth: humans were something the galaxy had never encountered before. Rulers realized humans were a force, not a faction. Generals understood humans were an unpredictable variable that reshaped the battlefield. The swarm, at last, began to fear what they could not understand. Elena Ward looked at the projections of future strikes and smiled faintly. "They are learning," she said. "The galaxy is learning. And once the swarm fully understands, it will be too late for them to adapt." The stars trembled as humanity prepared its final offensive. The swarm, once unstoppable, now faced calculated human brilliance. Every strike had been anticipated, every maneuver observed, and yet the humans had adapted faster than the swarm could recalibrate. Admiral Keslan's flagship, the Resolute, hovered above the swarm's primary hive system, the Obsidian Nexus, a planet-sized structure teeming with millions of drones and cognition nodes. Elena Ward stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the holographic projections. "They believe we are scattered," she said softly. "They think their numbers protect them. They are wrong." The swarm's desperation. The swarm unleashed its full power, compressing fleets across 3 systems. Entire energy storms were detonated near human positions, attempting to obliterate their formations. Wormhole gates were jammed and drone swarms encircled human fleets from every angle. Yet humanity was ready. Ships adapted to energy storms by using reflective fields as shields and propulsion anchors. Boarding teams carried kinetic explosives into swarm command cores with near-suicidal precision. Destroyers rammed carriers to trigger chain reactions that obliterated entire squadrons of drones. Human casualties were heavy. Thousands of brave pilots and crews disappeared into the void. But each loss shaped the battlefield, leaving behind paths that trapped millions of swarm drones. Arwelthan's compound eyes widened as he observed from Concord Command. "They are dictating the fight." The turning point. In orbit around Obsidian Nexus, Captain Reyes' fleet executed Operation Eclipse. The plan was audacious. Human ships feigned retreat through a series of wormholes, drawing the swarm fleet into a narrow gravity corridor. Shadow fleets, cloaked and seemingly destroyed, emerged behind, above, and below the trapped swarm. Core detonations triggered in synchronization, collapsing the corridor and turning the enemy's own momentum against them. The battle was catastrophic. Swarm fleets collided with one another, unable to adapt fast enough. Thousands of drones were vaporized. The Obsidian Nexus surface erupted in cataclysmic energy as human boarding teams detonated gravity bombs within its core. On the Resolute, Elena watched silently. When the last projection blinked red, total neutralization of the swarm's central hive, she allowed herself a rare exhale. "We are not just surviving," she said. "We are winning in a way they will never understand." The shockwaves of victory. The galaxy felt the shockwaves. Systems long under swarm occupation were liberated almost overnight. Concord fleets, inspired and retrained by human doctrine, swept through contested sectors with unprecedented efficiency. Even skeptical species began formally allying with Earth, requesting human oversight for military strategy. Arwelthan, broken and humiliated, muttered in the chamber, "They are not a species, they are a force of nature." Yet victory came at a cost. Earth mourned thousands of heroes. Entire fleets had vanished. Cities across human space observed solemn memorials. But unlike other species, human society did not crumble. Instead, every loss became a lesson, every sacrifice a story to inspire the next wave of warriors. Elena addressed the Concord one final time before the last stage of the counteroffensive. "Do not assume we are reckless. Do not assume we are weak. Every decision is calculated. Every life we give reshapes the battlefield. Humanity does not fight like others because we do not measure strength the same way. You cannot predict us. You can only adapt, or perish." The final deception. Even as the swarm was crippled, humanity revealed one last strategy: a simulated retreat. They allowed the Concord to think the war was ending, while human engineers deployed quantum destabilizers and swarm-controlled systems, collapsing remaining wormholes and preventing regrouping. When the true scale of human planning was revealed, panic swept through the galaxy. Entire fleets of previously confident commanders had been neutralized without a single direct human casualty in those regions. The Concord realized, humans had redefined the rules of warfare, turning sacrifice, deception, and adaptability into a weapon no species could match. The swarm's last lesson. In fragmented pockets, the swarm attempted counterattacks. But each engagement played into human set patterns. Every trap was prepared in advance. Every maneuver had a contingency. By the time the last swarm hive fell, it was clear. The swarm's greatest error was underestimating humans. Humans had fought not just to win, but to teach the galaxy a new standard of apex strategy. Every life lost had been invested. Every move predicted. Every victory engineered. Admiral Keslan finally spoke to Elena aboard the Resolute. "You have done what no species has ever done," he said. "You have fought not to survive, but to reshape existence itself." Elena's expression was calm, almost serene. "No," she replied. "We fought to show the galaxy what it means to be human." The stars fell silent. After decades of relentless human strategy, sacrifice, and ingenuity, the Jakor swarm no longer threatened the galaxy. The Concord, once arrogant and dismissive, had learned a painful truth. Humans were not merely another species, they were a force the galaxy had never encountered. Across the chamber of the Concord, delegates from every major species gathered. Their eyes were wide with awe, suspicion, and a reluctant respect. Arwale Than of the Virex Combine, once a vocal critic, addressed the assembly with rare humility. They were underestimated, by all of us. Not in firepower. Not in fleets. Not in numbers. But in their capacity to sacrifice, to adapt, to think beyond the expected. Humanity has taught the galaxy a new rule. Strength is not in numbers. Strength is in choice. Human dominance without tyranny. Elena Ward stood on the Concord dais, flanked by Admiral Keslan and other human commanders. She spoke calmly, but every word carried weight. "We do not seek conquest. We do not seek dominion. We seek survival, yes, but not just for ourselves. Humanity fights so the galaxy can endure, and so the choices we make can shape a better future for all. Those who fight beside us will learn this. Those who oppose us will understand it too late." The chamber was silent, stunned by the combination of clarity, confidence, and quiet menace. Humans had reshaped interstellar politics. They formed alliances not through coercion, but through demonstration. Systems once trembling under swarm control now looked to humanity for guidance, protection, and strategy. And yet, humans never imposed themselves unfairly. They led by example, by calculated risk, by showing that sacrifice for the greater good was not weakness, but power. The legacy of sacrifice. The galaxy came to understand humanity's greatest weapon, their willingness to pay a price no one else would. Ships were rebuilt faster than they were destroyed. Pilots trained harder than they had ever fought. Strategic simulations accounted not just for what humans could do, but what they were willing to endure. Even in the wake of the final battles, memorials across Earth and human colonies honored those lost. Each name told a story, a life given not in vain but in service to a larger plan. This culture of sacrifice and calculation became the foundation of human strategy across the galaxy. Other species struggled to mimic it, and most failed. For every alien general who had once scoffed at humans, there was now a lesson carved in loss. The final battle remembered. Historians later called it the Obsidian Nexus Campaign, a series of maneuvers so precise, so audacious, it became legendary. Entire swarm fleets were destroyed not by sheer force, but by traps, deception, and carefully chosen human sacrifices. Concord fleets learned to fight differently under human guidance, reshaping interstellar warfare forever. The galaxy had not seen a victory this thorough, this calculated, ever before. Even the swarm, reduced to scattered remnants, adapted no further. They had learned the unteachable lesson. Humans could not be predicted, outnumbered, or intimidated. The final message. Before returning to Earth, Elena Ward addressed the galaxy via a unified holographic transmission. "This is humanity," she said, calm, eyes unwavering. "We fight not because we desire glory. We fight because we must. Every life we give, every loss we endure, is an investment in a future where the galaxy survives. You will not remember us for our fleets, nor for our weapons. You will remember us for our choices, for our resilience, for our courage, and for our willingness to pay the price others will not." Every system, every species, every observer understood the weight behind her words. Humans had done what no one else could, they had redefined power itself. Epilogue, a galaxy transformed. Years later, Earth stood at the center of a network of human-led alliances. Trade, defense, and diplomacy flowed through systems once threatened by extinction. Alien scientists studied human tactics. Philosophers debated human culture. Every major species acknowledged a new reality: humans were apex. But humanity did not revel in domination. They remembered the cost. They trained the next generation of strategists, pilots, and engineers. Every child was taught history, sacrifice, and foresight. Every human knew that power was measured not in survival, but in the impact of each choice. And in the void between stars, the memory of those who had died lingered, not as shadows of failure, but as the spark that forged humanity into legend. The galaxy had underestimated them. The galaxy had feared them. And in the end, the galaxy had learned the truth. Aliens measured strength in numbers, humans measured it in sacrifice. And nothing in the universe could match that.